video.
Hey, Jeff, can you hear us?
You can.
Hey, that other message about the 6 o'clock meeting, was that was that just a typo type thing?
That was something else. So this is what we have, and I'm glad everybody can make it. Expecting a few other people as well. So
For the invitation, Jeff. Appreciate it.
whatever that means. Okay, so I'm expecting maybe one or two additional people to join us today. As we know, the county has postponed the public hearing scheduled for 19 April.
Good.
And this is part of the ZMOD brouhaha, where the Supreme Court has ruled that the ZMOD was not a time essence change that had to be done. And because of that, they're now reverted back to the 1978 zoning ordinance. And the references in the original ZMOD document referred to the, at that time, current ordinance. So it has to be reconstituted and rewritten. With that, we don't know how far it goes. But in any case, the essence of the document would be the same, whether it was against the 78 or the 01, 21 document. So we need to look at what we have now. I have sent some references. Carrie gave us some documents about the societal course about parking. I've referenced that. We have the RCA revised letter. We have the SDCCA draft resolution, and there were some other documents that had been circulated as well. The crux to the situation is, does the county get a good return on the reduction of parking? Some people have said that if parking is reduced, maybe there should be environmental benefits, more green space. The county hasn't requested that. It's just said parking reduction as it is. And there's also the question about the zoning administrator, or whatever that person's actual title is, who has the authority, independent of other review, of reducing levels of parking. People have quibbled about that as well. So let me first turn it over to whoever would like to speak. For example, the RCA folks, and I know that we just got another email today that refined that. Who would like to speak to that first? And then I'm going to turn it over to Carrie after that. Carrie, make sure that you're off mute when it's your turn, all right?
He's already off
And you
mute.
want me to talk?
No.
Well, I would
it
say
shows
either
that he's on
Dennis
mute.
or I can talk. Dennis is the immediate past president of RCA, and I'm the current president. But I know, Dennis, you've been working very closely with Gary on this. So why don't you go ahead?
Okay. And first off, I'd like to thank Donna and Carrie and Jeff and everybody who have sent material out. Very helpful, very informative. I feel very passionately about this, and there's two pieces to my concern. The first is the more generic, which is the loss of community involvement in the decisions that affect our lives directly. And I know this is part of the Gartner report and all that, which I don't think is helpful to the county, number one. But just taking away the opportunity for the community to have any kind of voice, I think, was a serious problem with this proposal. The second piece, I'll tell you, comes from personal experience. I have 3 millennial daughters who, over the past 15 years, have lived individually and collectively in 6 different apartment and townhouses complex. Every single one of them, I can't begin to tell you how many wasted hours and gallons of gas driving around trying to find a parking space to visit my daughters. The solid fact, the reality is, as you look around at current standards, they're insufficient for what the people need and want. So when you start talking about cutting back a further up to 50%, all you're doing is shifting the problem. You're taking it away, taking something away from the people who live there and forcing them into doing things, driving on side, parking on side streets, parking 5 blocks away in the winter and what have you. That's it's really unconscionable to do that. This comes down to greed. The greed is that the developers would rather not build parking spaces because they're expensive, and everybody recognizes that. But they're also an integral part of a home and a house. This is part of the American dream. This is what people aspire to. And to put this into effect, we will be massively adversely affecting the people who can least afford this. This is for low income people, minority folks, new immigrants. Those are the people who are going to pay a very heavy price for this. So as an introduction, that's my concerns. Gary, I know you have been directly involved with the committee. Please add anything that I've forgotten.
Well, I will say that myself and Donna Jacobson, who's on here, she's from Mason District, Annandale, president of a homeowners association there. We were on the working group for Parking Reimagined. I think the feeling there, and Donna can jump in, is there were a lot of concerns on individual aspects of this. And generally speaking, while there were good staff on this and they did a lot of outreach, there wasn't much listening. So issues would be brought up and they were essentially ignored. I'll give you just one example of Reston, for instance, has larger TSA areas than others in the county. It's just the historical way they got developed. It was brought up that instead of zoning areas that should have been looked at like in other counties by distance from metro stations. That was, we were told, even our planning commissioner was told, well, of the stuff to take buses. That was kind of the, I mean, usually it wasn't that coarse. It was very nice, but you know, there wasn't listening to issues that were brought up by a number of people across the county in different areas of the county. I think also to emphasize Dennis's point there, this adverse affects lower income people and really minorities. And so to a lot of people, it's against the One Fairfax policy. Also, there are environmental groups that are concerned about this because of the issue Dennis brought up, that it's not going to really get us more green. And even our last meeting of the work group for Parking Reimagined, it was more starkly even pointed out in a nice way that what we're going to get is, instead of when the parking lot isn't there, we're just going to get more buildings. And that was just pointed out directly, surprisingly, to me. So we're not going to get any more green out of this. The animal groups are concerned. And also to Dennis's point about, you know, over parking in lots of areas of the county. Our supervisor for Hunter Mill, Supervisor Alcorn, is doing his office is doing what are the problems of places that don't have enough parking. And he has, I think, quite a few places in Hunter Mill that would like more parking. So I would hope, and he challenged the other supervisors to do the same thing he's doing, which is going out and finding out the things where you have, you know, not enough parking. There was nothing wrong with this, as if it had been parking reimagined, meaning we went into more detail. We looked at distance, we looked at specific situations. There are differences in some of the metro stations, their access in the parking that was built for them. So it wasn't looked at in detail. It wasn't, to me, it was, somebody had told the staff, you will get the parking reduced and it needs to be done by this date, and that was it. And so that's what I would say. Donna Jacobson is on here, and she was even more involved than I was, and we were both heavily involved, but she's dramatically involved. So you might want to ask her to comment.
Got her hand up. Mhm.
Well, I agree with everything that Gary says and everything that Dennis said before him. The two other points I would like to bring up, I'm in Mason District, and we do not have solid public transportation infrastructure. So when they say that Parking Reimagined would get cars off the road, that is not correct, because we do not have an alternative to using automobiles. All the Parking Reimagined is going to do in Mason District is make it difficult to park. We would need a better public infrastructure. The second thing that bothers me is a lot of us have been asking to see the underlying analysis that the county staff did to get to the parking rates. And that has not been given to anyone yet, as far as I'm aware of it. It's not been given to me. And I would definitely like to see that analysis before moving forward.
Okay. Donna, you still have your hand up?
No, I'm taking it down now.
Thank you. I was just curious. Okay. Roger, I want to thank you for joining us. Roger Hoskin is a member of the Transportation Advisory Commission for Fairfax County, and I'm happy that he could join us. Lynn, you have your hand up.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Jeff. I just wanted to share with the group. I know that you all saw the position statement that Reston Citizens Association submitted to our local district supervisor, Walter Alcorn. And we did get a response from him. And he basically said, and I found this hard to believe, but he said that he had not heard serious concerns about Parking Reimagined from his board colleagues, including at a couple of board committee meetings. So he was saying that the chance of it passing is pretty high, and the chance of it getting deferred is close to zero. But he did, as Gary mentioned, ask for us to identify areas that are troublesome currently. I would also like to add that it was my understanding, and this is from one of the meetings that I attended, that the transportation folks, and it may have been Mike Garcia or who is the, I don't know who the other.
John King.
John King. That Reston was identified as a potential pilot for paid parking. So I have severe consternations about this. And I think that, you know, all they have to do is look at Reston Town Center to see how well paid parking was accepted in this community.
Well,
Thank you, Lynn.
the final goal of the Parking Reimagined is to get to the point where they're doing paid parking. So,
Right.
Okay. Roger, would you like to say anything? I don't hear anything from Roger. Carrie, what about you? You haven't said anything as of yet?
Roger Hoskins, it's good to see you, buddy. We used to see each other often years ago at the Fairfax Federation. Can you hear me, Roger? Apparently not. We see him, but
He is muted, so we
Yeah.
cannot hear him.
yeah, and it
Looks
doesn't
like the
look
His
like
picture is
microphone
frozen.
is muted. Yeah.
It doesn't look like he's paying
It's not
attention
moving.
either. Yeah, it looks like he's doing. Roger, are you there? Roger. Hey, Roger. Okay, that's a shame.
He
Okay,
might
so
have video problems, and so we might have been seeing his last video before it failed. But Carrie, go ahead. I know you
yes,
have a
I made
different
some
position.
notes. Yeah, I made some notes here. And I do apologize, Gary. Gary, I tried to listen to what you had to say. I couldn't hear you or understand you clearly, but
Yeah, you were breaking up a bit, Gary.
Hello?
yeah, and so I had difficulty following what you
Computer
said.
problems earlier, so maybe it's,
But I thought, and I would like to kind of feed back as the notes I made and as I was listening to you. Dennis was the first one to speak. And Dennis, you said you had two concerns, a loss of community involvement and also a personal concern about your experience with your daughters being unable to find parking. Did I get that right?
Yes, but extended from there, but yes.
Okay. And you also mentioned, I scribbled down here that it was part of the American dream. I
Very
had that.
much so.
Okay, so and you may have seen me step away a moment because I grabbed 4 different books that I have read on these related subjects, and I noticed specifically in this book, I don't know how well you can make that out. It's Suburban Nation: The Rise of Sprawl and the Decline of the American Dream. This dissects the physical design of suburbs brilliantly and sets forth more clearly than anyone has done in our time the elements of good planning. So so key thing, it just jumped out at me there, Gary, and then Donna Johnson talked about being from Mason District. And Donna, I understood you to say that you hadn't seen sufficient analysis that you would like to see from the board. Is that correct? Did I understand you correctly?
I'm the county staff. I'm on the Parking Reimagined work group, and we have not gotten sufficient analysis. We also did a FOIA to get the underlying information, and we did not get any sufficient information.
Okay, thank you, Don.
just to add to that, we made a bunch of requests for individual items that we would like to have and didn't get those. So I think we were lacking in analysis, and if you didn't hear me, it just seemed that this was, we're going to reduce the parking, it doesn't matter, and, you know, we're not going to bother with the individual issues that people are bringing up, dig into this deeply enough.
Okay, so just to feed it back to you to make sure I understood, you feel like that the county has not, the county staff that is working on this has been non-responsive.
I would say the people on it are really good people and analysts. They are not responsive because I think my guess is they were told to get there. So
The last phrase, I missed it.
they were told to reduce the parking and get it done by a certain date is my guess what happened here.
I see.
So they were capable people that just did not give us the analysis, and I think the contractor hired had their mind made up, and there's where we are with lack of analysis, lack of individual areas. I think the other night on the Federation board meeting, the Mount Vernon person talked about just as a metro, a TOD area. She was talking about they never built enough parking. And that's true of a number of stations out here. So you have to look at not just broadly by, planning area. You have to look at distance, and you have to look at individual areas. You can't just paint a broad brush across the entire county.
If you're looking at issues with the Parking Reimagined. I actually joined the work group because I was in favor of reducing parking in various areas throughout the county. I changed my mind in that I'm opposed to segments of this parking amendment, and I can go through the reasons why. But I'm opposed to this parking amendment because it gets rid of parking without getting any net benefit. It doesn't give a net benefit to the environment. It doesn't give a net benefit to the residents. It gives a fantastic benefit to the developers, which that's fine. I don't mind that. But there's all the stakeholders, when you do public policy, all the stakeholders should get some type of benefit from it. And in this amendment, it ends up being just the developers basically.
Should they be? Okay.
And
Thank
with
you.
the environmental side of it, unfortunately, I don't know if you're familiar with ECRAC, the Environmental Quality Advisory Council, but they've come out against this amendment. They're saying it's not providing a net benefit to the environment enough. I'm on the board of Friends of Homes Run, which is an environmental group in Mason District, and a lot of the groups, the smaller environmental groups, are against this particular parking amendment. They want to reduce parking like I do, but this amendment just doesn't give enough of an environmental benefit. And it doesn't require any green spaces. It doesn't require additional tree canopy and things like that. They could end up getting rid of the parking lot, but just building additional buildings, which doesn't reduce the impervious surfaces.
That's right. And I think those were the two key items that I brought up at the Parking Reimagined meeting that I attended. And that was number one, they need to plan this out on a micro level because there are neighborhoods where you have a greater proportion of elderly, and you also have a greater proportion of families with young children. And those people are not going to be bicycling with their 5 kids to the grocery store and, tricycling or, bringing the groceries back home on a bike. They need automobiles and they need parking. The other thing is, as Donna was referring to, is that the net loss of the parking lot should result in a specific percentage of a return to green space or pervious land. So
Yeah, see, as some of you know me know, I'm big on environment. I love green space, every square foot we can get. However,
right.
for me, the problem is not that it's not giving green space. The problem is that it's taking a needed service away from the people who most need it. That's
Right.
the problem. We already have this in the county. We're already in a near crisis situation with this, and this will just make it that much worse.
So Lynn, thank you for speaking up and go ahead, Donna, you want to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say what Dennis just said is especially true of the multifamily dwellings because Annandale has a revitalization district. So our rate is going to be, if the proposed amendment goes through, between 0.4 to 0.8 parking space per bedroom. Now, the thing of it is, in multifamily dwellings, a lot of the people in Annandale who live in these dwellings do like plumbing work, air conditioning work, various tradesmen work. So they all have their trucks that they need to park close to their homes because it's filled with thousands of dollars worth of equipment.
Right.
So basically, you're causing problems with them. And you're causing problems. It's like, I'm going to be okay. I have enough parking space, but I feel bad about people, lower income people in multi-dwelling units who are not going to have as much of a place to park, or may have to eventually pay for parking. and the county says, well, we'll build more affordable housing, but not everyone is going to get affordable housing. So the cost of living for these people is going to be greater due to the parking cost. Now, there's a developer in our work group who's with EYA Homes, and he said, well, if this amendment goes through, over the next 10 years, he could probably build 50 more affordable housing. Well, 50 is not that much. And you say, well, there's more than one developer. Yes, but you know, we have a lot of people who need affordable housing, so they're not going to get the housing, and the cost of parking is going to go up, or transportation if they have to take metro or whatever else.
And what's their definition of affordable housing? Yeah.
Harry, you were saying?
Well, I'm thinking about Jeff right now that Jeff hasn't spoken.
Well, I have a position. It's reflected in the Sully District Council's position. You've seen it. I'm listening to what people have to say, and I've heard right now 3 points. One, if we're going to reduce parking, we should get an environmental benefit. It doesn't seem to be the case. Two, somebody's indicated that, you know, a lack of public participation. We've heard that. And the third one is that multifamily housing is usually insufficient. I really believe that if we targeted this, we could come up with a compromise, but it has to be targeted. Just like in the Tysons area and other areas where there is metro, the county over the, you know, pre-pandemic actually reduced parking requirements in the Tysons area based on the closeness to a metro stop. And you know, if you're a quarter of a mile away, if you're a half a mile away, if you're 3/4 of a mile away, you got parking reductions based on the fact that people would more likely take that. And I understand that in the short term. I have lived in Northern Virginia for 43 years and worked for 38 of them. And I never knew from one job to the next where I would be working. Sometimes I could walk to work. Sometimes I was in Montgomery County. Sometimes I was in the district. Sometimes I was in Mount Vernon area. And not all of them allowed me to take public transportation. And therefore I was dependent on a POV. For example, Skyline has great public transportation if you're going in and out of the district. But if you're coming from Weston or Southeastern, it's hard to get to. You got to go in to come out. And when Arlington dropped the streetcar, you're now on a bus. And that would take you an hour and a half to get to, much longer than it would take to drive. And so to make the assumption that people who live in a certain area near a metro service won't need a car is not always true. You don't know where you're going to work. And the fact that you're near metro today may be a benefit in the future. It might not be in the near future. And the other one was, you know, are you on a bus route? Is that bus route guaranteed to remain there? In our community, when they replanned for the Silver Line opening last Thanksgiving fall time period, they reduced the bus service in our community for whatever reason and rerouted it a different way. So people who were within a quarter of a mile of the bus now found themselves to be 3/4 of a mile from the bus. And therefore they were no longer had easy access to public transportation. Now, the areas that got the bus service now had 24 by, had hourly service from the morning to the evening. So some places the bus service was much better than it was before. Others it was worse. And I cannot believe that we would wish to plan parking and higher density based on bus service that can be removed in a reevaluation. We also know, of course, over the course of the last 100 years, that rail transport has been removed incremental by incremental. If you're in a major city, what used to have trolley lines down the streets, Electric Avenue in Vienna, right? The W&OD trail went out all the way out to Herndon. It
Percival.
Percival. But my point being is
Right.
that, had that rail continued, it would have been a lot cheaper to divert it to Dulles Airport than to build the Silver Line. I mean, there was service to Reston, to Herndon, to to Sterling, to Leesburg,
Yeah,
to
would have
Percival.
worked great.
We tore up the tracks, built a bike path, and then spent $10 billion to build a new rail system, right? So things are always in transit. And I do mean
And
that.
we only got the bike and running trail because of the electric wires running overhead. That's the only reason we held on to those. One quick point, Jeff. Everybody talks about, oh my God, close to metro, this, that, and the other. I mean, I can only speak to Reston, but the vast majority of apartments that are close to the metro are high-end apartments. They're $2,500 a month for a studio, $8,000 to $10,000 a month for a 2-bedroom. And those people have cars, even though they're living on top of the metro. They're paying, exorbitant rents, and they have cars. So we're not saving anything there.
Okay.
I think that's a good point, Dennis. Could I also add something, Jeff, to your three takeaways? The other one that I had mentioned, and I don't know if you were on when I was mentioning this, but this Parking Reimagined, the county is trying to do this in a broad brush fashion, and these neighborhoods need to be reviewed on a micro level so that these parking, they need to tier or do something to weight the different neighborhoods based on the age of the occupants, because I can tell you there are a lot of folks that live in my neighborhood that are much older that need to have a car. I mean, they will not take public transportation. They're not going to walk. They're not going to ride a bike. That's how they're going to get to the grocery store to where they're going. So I think the county is trying to do a broad brushed, one size fits all, and that is just not right.
We have asked in the working group for them to look at specific areas and to do specific analysis, and we have not been able to get them to do it. And that I think that is very necessary. I also think, Jeff, one more point to add is the Director of Land Development Services being able to do administrative parking adjustments of up to 50%. And also they took out the paragraph where there has to be an evaluation of how it affects the surrounding communities. They took that paragraph out of the proposed amendment from the old zoning ordinance. So I personally think that is way too high of an amount, and not to mention from a point of internal controls, having one person responsible for being able to do up to a 50% reduction, there's a lot of issues that could occur in that situation.
I appreciate that, Donna. So what I'm going to do now is share from my desk some of the documents that we already have. That may be the document from the Sully District Council or the RCA letter. Is anybody from the RCA wish to share it and go through that? And Carrie, before I do that, you had said you had a couple of books. You showed us one, and then we went from there. Do you want to show us some of the other books that you have?
Sure. I just wanted to comment on a couple of things. One of the Lynn, you had made those points that you just made before, and the first time that you made the point, I'm 67 in September myself, and I have,
Oh, we're about the same age.
so I've lived in North Springfield 35 years and I've never owned a car. And I have gotten along just fine without a car, and it has saved me lots of money.
I
So
think that's great, Carrie. I'm glad that you live in a community that offers you that. I'll say I grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana, and I didn't need a car. I used a streetcar and the bus system to get everywhere. But when I turned 26, there were other places that I wanted to go that the streetcar and the bus system and public transportation didn't take me. But I think that's awesome.
are you in Reston? Is that where you are?
I am in Reston. Yes.
Okay. So you're not familiar with North Springfield. North Springfield was built in the 1950s, and it's just inside the Beltway, and it's a typical auto-centric, not walkable, 1950s suburban community. Walk at your own risk. We've made some progress over the 35 years that I've served there on the board. We do have VRA down the street, but so this the point I want to make is Metro provides door-to-door access. And Ida, do you want to come in here so they can see you? This is my 95-year-old Aunt Ida, who you just saw in the back frame walk over. She's listening attentively here and watching
I
closely.
love it.
And
Hi, Aunt
Ida gets picked up by Metro Access, and they take her any place she wants to go.
That's fantastic.
And the other element, because Jeff mentioned it, I will refer you to these two excellent books, Walkable City by Jeff Speck and Walkable City Rules, also by Jeff Speck. In these books, he talks about the dangers and the isolation that American society has created, especially for us, the elderly, as we lose our quick reflexes of youth, we become more isolated because of the dependence of driving. So I want to be careful in my language. I can't drive at night anymore, for example. I think it's a challenge for many of us as we age. There are quantified, he uses in the book solid data showing the danger to society for aging drivers. We all know that 400,000 are injured every year on our highways, 40,000 killed every year. So I guess my underlying point here is alternatives to automobiles and not owning an automobile is safer and healthier. You know, people who
I think that you're making an excellent point, Carrie, and I appreciate the fact that you have been able to live this incredible walkable, access to public transportation. But there are people, and that's why I say there have to be micro psychodemographics that are done, psychographic studies based on the needs of the population. I think it's an unrealistic expectation, with all due respect, to expect a 70-year-old who is used to driving themselves to all of a sudden change how they do things. I think it's I just think forcing that kind of a change.
I'm a 67-year-old and I have to change how I do things as the years have progressed. I can't play basketball anymore. I can't jog anymore. As we age, we're all changing how we do things.
Yeah,
Okay,
Carrie, I
Basically,
certainly
how-
understand, and again, I echo Lynn, and that it's great you've been able for this period of time to do this. But you are, less than 1% of Fairfax County population in your capacity to do this. Most people are not. I'll be 70 in a couple weeks. I drive to the run. I mean, I do that sort of stuff because I need a car. I have some experience with Metro Access. I have an autistic son. Often it's great, but often it doesn't show up on time. It goes to the wrong address. It's not reliable on a day-to-day basis. So, again, I think what we have to look at is what is it that's going to work for the county as a whole. And as Lynn has said, everybody's got a different story, and every community has a different story. And we need to be taking these into consideration. But the reality is that the automobile, whether it be electric or gas or hydrogen or whatever, is going to be with us for a while. And it's an important part of the American dream. People come to the suburbs because they want to come to the suburbs. Nobody's putting a gun to anybody's head and saying you have to move to Annandale or to Reston or to Mount Vernon or wherever. They come because they want to have a yard, they want to have a dog, they want to have their children go to a good school, and all of that requires a car. So, and a car requires a place to park.
Okay,
And
let,
so we need to factor
let me
that
make
all
a
in.
comment, Dennis. One of the things is that there is a process where you can live, and as Carrie said, you can live carless. But I have found that there's a disadvantage. For the first 14 years of my life with my family, we were carless. That meant we shopped where we could carry with a shopping cart, the little one where you put four paper bags of goods, and we'd go shopping and we'd bring the food back. And my brother and I would carry the extra bags that didn't fit in the cart. But that meant that if there was a sale that was a good price someplace else, we had to take a bus to get there, it no longer made sense for us to buy the sale goods if you had to factor in that four people were taking the bus to and from the shopping center. You lost the benefit of doing that. If there was a good shopping someplace else, furniture, we'd go to the main area and take the buses and have them ship it back to us and pay the shipping fee. So although you can do that, there is a limitation to one's life when you depend on public transportation. And some people, and as I said, it wasn't until my mother got her driver's license when I was 15 that we started driving. We inherited a car that sat on the back of our house and nobody knew how to drive it. So it was just funny because we had never driven. We never had a car. Our life changed when we had a car. When we visited our cousins, we no longer waited for two buses and the connection of the two buses to get where we were going. So what would take an hour and a half to 2 hours to one way might now take us 35 minutes. So you can do it. There are benefits both ways. We're not here to discuss the benefit of not owning a car or owning a car. That's a personal decision. What we're deciding is for those facilities that are being built or retrofitted within the county, how are we going to handle that? In the district, for example, they allow multifamily housing to be built without plans for parking because they feel that there's enough public transportation that is provided. I don't know if we have that persuasive infrastructure in the county that we can depend on that service our people. There are broad areas of the county, as Carrie indicated, that are car friendly and pedestrian unfriendly. And there are broad areas where people who bike are looked at askance. We'll get off the road. I started biking to work when I was 65. Only had one bad injury, and that was testing a new bike. But in any case, question we have for us is with what they've got in front of us with Parking Reimagined, are there areas that we can say this would make sense? And I think Donna and Lynn have already said that in certain instances, this would make sense, but it has to be carefully thought out. Well, the other one I think, Dennis, you mentioned was making certain that the vested power for reducing parking isn't in one person who's the super parking advocate or administrator, that there is review. And I think somebody, was it Donna or Lynn, who said that they took out the paragraph that had been thought to be put
Donna
in.
said that.
Yeah, that said that they wanted to make certain that when parking was reduced or such, that they judged the impact to the surrounding community, and that was taken out.
Is she talking about the Article 6 draft that is up out there right now?
Yes.
Yes. And that took that out. Draysville District, McLean, and Tyson's, they are so, well, we're all opposed to it. Well, Donna and I, and certainly them, that just should not come out. That is a critical point, and I think Supervisor Faust has brought that up. But we've talked about a lot of issues, and I think you're summarizing things pretty well, on kind of where we are. We've all got our I'm 76 and lived in the county since DC in 51, and I wasn't driving in 51, but the car has meant a lot to people I've been associated with wherever they live, including right in Reston Town Center today, because there are still restrictions on the use of the metro and so forth. So we have to not take away the choice of individual people. And I won't get into this, but seeing an uncle at 100 peel out of a church parking lot where they're celebrating his 100th birthday. He probably wasn't that safe at the point.
That's funny.
Okay. So one of the things we can do is we can look at the Reston letter and see if we want to modify it one way or the other based on our thoughts and inputs, add paragraphs to it, subtract some things. We can start with the Sully District Council item. I don't have no problem with which way we're going, but this was brought out from the RCA. So why doesn't one member of the RCA share the RCA document and a word, turn on change control or track changes, and then we can play around with it. I'm certain there are points that Carrie made that we can add to it, and I'm certain there are other points that we've discussed that we can modify it. Roger, is there anything you want to say? You've been there. I just want to make sure that you're. Oh, he's moving.
I'm moving. Yeah, you can hear me. Yeah, I'm Roger Hoskin. I'm the Mason District Representative to the Transportation Advisory Committee. And we've discussed this over and over and over again. I think one of the problems here, the biggest problem is free parking. I don't say you can't park. You got to pay for it.
Yep.
It's a scarce resource. It's a very expensive resource to build and maintain.
Yes.
And what you're trying to do is to get the people to change, make small changes. Arlington just eliminated single-family dwelling.
Yeah,
I don't think that's going to stick. But there are a lot of people, particularly young people, who don't want to get their driving license.
Yeah, that
That's
was our
true.
kids. They didn't want to get driver's license.
They didn't.
I
Well,
did.
I'm an old.
First
I
possible moment.
Yeah.
I didn't get one until I was 17. I told my parents to go pound sand. You can haul me around, and they did for a couple years, and then they said, "Get your driving license. We'll buy you a Mustang." So I got a better price. But what it means if you're going to price parking, like in Alexandria along the street, it's free. Street parking is wretchedly free. So people will sit there in a parking lot all day. Why move? Arlington charges for it. And the expense to the merchants to build that is explained if you've ever read The High Cost of Free Parking, and I have, is I don't think you get rid of it, just price it. You'd be surprised how people can change their habits. There you go. Change it a little bit. And you don't, if you get 5% of the cars off the road.
Can I ask, who does that hurt?
Uh,
When you
people-
start charging for parking in residential areas, who gets hurt by that?
No one.
No,
The taxpayer.
no.
Yeah.
Maybe the people on this call don't get hurt, but the person who's working as a nurse, a fireman, a carpenter, a plumber, they get hurt. They're the least able to pay for this sort of extra expense here. And then who gets the money? And what is that money used for?
Well, what he points out in the book is what you do is you cycle that money right back to the locality.
And you believe that? You believe
It's
that's gonna
also the guests. It's the kids
Yes.
of the people who can't afford, who shouldn't have to
Well-
pay to park.
No, I got laughed out of the room, but I said up here by Justice High School, Peace Valley Lane, kids like to park. And they've been doing it for years. So now they want to tear up the park and put in another parking lot. And of course, the residents there were utterly opposed to it, as was I. Said, what you ought to do is charge for parking along Peace Valley Lane. Make them pay for it. If you go to the university, you pay for parking. You pay for parking everywhere. If you're rich enough to have a car in high school, then you can afford to pay for the parking. In fact, you don't even have to have a car. You just have to qualify. If you're a senior, go buy yourself a parking tab. Well, what does that do? You'd be surprised how fast you can get carpool that way. I got a parking permission tab. You want to take me to school and bring me home? Free.
The interesting thing with Donald Shoup is he actually has a PhD in economics, and he followed the economic theory of Henry George. He was a George's
Yeah, the single
economist.
tax.
And basically, he was in favor of taxing the common areas throughout, like the city or so forth, such as taxing the curb area, and hopefully that would help lower the income taxes and the other types of taxes.
What he wanted to do was tax land.
Yeah, the value of
The
land.
single taxes.
And without having income taxes. But I doubt that you can't take one part of the theory and not the entire theory
Not
and
the whole
implement it.
Progress
But
and
I think we're getting off, to me, we're back to the central issue that Jeff was talking about is what the Federation needs to do from here.
Okay.
I'm happy to share my screen.
Lynn-
Jeff, I just sent you a question to see if chat, if you'd like me to share my screen with the RCA letter up and we can track changes on that. And I'll send that
Why
to
don't
you.
do that? You know how to share your screen.
Yep.
Okay. Why don't we share it in a Word and we can go over it and then discuss what we think about the RCA letter and see how we might want to tail it. Okay.
Okay, so I'm
Jeff,
gonna
I
put
think
this
it's
on, we'll
slowly
put this on track changes.
And by the way, that Supervisor Alcorn was aware of a lot of the issues. So it was written because of the tone considers the fact that he had some conversations with me in particular, but others as well. So he was not a novice to the issue. But
So this is the email, this went to Supervisor Alcorn on the 17th.
and if you look at the addendum to it, it really gets into the specific issues that we're talking about of real concern with Parking Reimagined. And it emphasizes some of the
You're gonna
points
pay for
here, like in opposition to the one Fairfax policy in the letter itself.
Okay, let's look at that attachment. I think your attachment talks about the specific areas, right?
Right.
Okay, let me go to the attachments. I'm going to stop sharing this and we will go to the attachment. So this is the issues.
I just don't drive very much. I'll take an Uber. I'm driving down.
So as you're putting that up, I had an answer here to Dennis's question about where that money goes in Donald Soup's book. He gives the example of Pasadena that as a result of charging for parking is spending more than $1 million a year in meter money on new public services that helped convert what had been a commercial skid row into one of the most popular tourist destinations in Southern California. Dedicating revenue to paying for local public services can be a very positive step in the community and lead to cleaner and safer sidewalks, for example, that may be renovated with that revenue.
On
So
the
I had an
map,
assurance that
people
Fairfax
at least
County was going to
report it.
follow that model. That would be interesting.
For
Okay,
California,
Carrie,
they're lucky because they have good weather and excellent
Right.
transportation. So both
Good
of those
point,
are good.
Donna.
I missed her point. What was it?
To me,
Yeah, I missed what you said, Donna. I'm sorry.
okay. California is very lucky in that they have very good weather and excellent mass transportation. So that helps the situation quite a bit.
I
They
don't.
haven't lived.
California's been infamous for abysmal traffic. Look at the 5 out there. I mean, California's car century. I don't know what you're basing that on, Donna. The weather, yeah. I agree with you on your point about weather.
okay, let's look at
And
this
good
for
mass
example.
transportation.
So the Parking Reimagined has these issues, and let's look at the first bullet point. The amendment benefits developers and the county staff. Oh wait. The amendment benefits developers, and we can't say it benefits the county staff because they have no.
No, it's not benefiting. Well, it does benefit the county staff because of the release of the controls that they don't have to look at anymore. So they will be spending less time on parking issues because.
One size fits all.
Right.
Okay, I believe that the county staff now has that parking czar, so the parking czar's workload will be increased, and so it's nix knocks. It's not an
Okay.
increase or a decrease. So I would say take that 4 words out. Okay.
It
All right.
benefits the
Yeah, I
county
agree.
revenue,
That's
tax
okay.
revenue.
That's all right.
Well, nowhere in here
Take
have
it
we
out.
talked
Take
about
it out.
charging for parking yet. That's a separate issue. Carrie's mentioned it, but this doesn't talk in
No.
that sense. So I
We
think
want to
that
take out and the county staff.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, no point poking them in
Right.
the eye.
Yeah,
That's
that
fine.
I've always found that you can get more with honey than vinegar, right? As the saying goes.
Yes.
But
Yes.
does not improve.
We have been complimenting, this letter also compliments the county staff in the letter itself, so.
Excuse me, I'm a little concerned here. We're editing the Reston letter now. Is that what we're doing?
Not the letter, but their points. These are the points that the Reston letter stated, and I believe that we can work that point and then develop our position based on those points. And I think there's some things in here that Carrie that you need to put in there. And I think we'll be able to agree with you that you should have points in there. So that's what I'm looking at. So, and the next line is, but it does not improve the quality of life for residents and does not do enough for the environment. I think let's make this more pointed and in there. So the amendment benefits developers, true, And that statement about not improving the quality of life for residents is debatable. Okay? Because some people would say not having a car is a benefit, but it does not do enough for the environment. And I think that is a point we all can agree on.
Yeah, see, I would go the other way and say that it clearly reduces the quality of life. So that what you've got now is kind of in the middle.
What do you think of that, Carrie?
Gary and I are obviously opposite ends of the spectrum. You know, somebody who supports a all carless, car-free future development. And I think anything with big oil, big auto, big asphalt is diminishes our quality of life. I'd like to send you a copy of this book. I'll pay for it, Gary, if you give me your address and you'll read it.
Well, I'm living
So
in
that's what my
Reston
point
Town
is that-
Center. Let me just point out, Carrie, that I'm living in Reston Town Center because my wife and I wanted to be in a walkable community. So we're doing that, but we still need cars. And there are things like the difficulty of walking over the metro station. It is very difficult for many people because this wasn't designed right, like the Mount Vernon one, like one in Tyson's. And so you still have accessibility issues for even a metro area. While I'm here because of being a Waco community and like it a lot, it doesn't mean I and my wife don't need vehicles. And we do, and it enhances our life to have those vehicles. So I don't know, Dennis is probably the best at phrasing this.
Well, I've got a sharp position on
So
it, so I'm probably on the far end.
Well, I believe that both Carrie and Dennis are on opposite ends of the same spectrum. And
Yes.
it deals with the improvement of quality of life. And that's what I'm saying at
It
this
just says
point.
does not improve. It just says does not improve. That's in the middle.
I can live with that.
Carrie?
Oh, no. Uh, um, you know, I'm outvoted. But no, anything to do with the car, you won't convince me that improves quality of life. It's tons of steel and it kills and maims, and the societal cost is abysmal. 100 years of tax subsidies to big oil, asphalt,
Well,
and
you
all of
We
know,
can all go
part of
back
the,
to 1880
made of
and
maims.
start growing chickens in the hallway of the apartment buildings we live in.
but let's remember where China is going, dramatic increases in cars, and it will be that way for years and years to come. And
I
they're
mentioned India, Indonesia,
Okay.
Egypt,
India,
I
Nigeria.
would say-
Indonesia,
I
Well,
would-
Philippines.
what would y'all say if we put a little statements, because I'm keeping in mind that this is the Federation document, this is not the RCA document. What would y'all think if we put something at the beginning of this bullet point that says whether the amendment improves the quality of life for residents is debatable. However, the amendment benefits developers and does not do enough for the environment.
No, I can't accept it.
Okay.
I think
No,
other than the county
hey,
statute.
always, hey Jeff, editing by committee, especially over Zoom. I suspect it's 8:30 now. We'll be here till 8:30 tomorrow morning.
That's true.
Or if
Okay.
we're lucky.
All right then. So open a new white page if you would.
Fair enough.
Open
I'll
a
tell you
new,
what, why don't each of us take this document, edit it up as best we can, distribute it
No,
around.
what I want us to do tonight is I'm going to ask you to give me 4 points in favor and 4 points against. You should know, like the old story about everybody gets a yellow sticky, you write things down. I'm going to edit. So put a top thing in there that says pro. And on the right, make 2 columns. Can you make 2 columns in this document, layout or design?
What is pro? Pro what? Pro parking.
Pro parking reimagined, and make the next column con.
what, I don't understand.
Let's read.
We're expressing, I think that the Federation is going to express concern with Parking Reimagined, even.
What I'm saying is we may be doing that, but I want to see the points that people make. Okay, so we have a pro column. We're going to put a con column on the right.
Well, this is not working.
Okay, all right. So then leave pro up there, and we'll put con below it. Okay, because I expected fewer pros than cons. Okay.
I have a question real fast, Jeff. When we do this, can we talk specifically about the amendment and how it affects
Right.
Fairfax County as opposed to getting involved in more esoteric aspects of the amendment or the
Right.
concept?
We can, but
Yep.
it's the county is working in the latter system that you described.
So I think this is a good idea, Jeff, the pro and the con. The first pro thing I see with Parking Reimagined is it reimagines how we're going to handle parking in the county and attempts to reduce the amount of parking. To me, that is a positive.
Okay.
But who's talking? Is that Carrie?
This is Kerry
That's
Campbell.
Carrie.
I said
That's
that.
Carrie.
Gary, where do the cars go that don't have a parking space now? Where do they go? I'm asking.
They park in the spaces that are allotted for people with disabilities. That's where they park.
So
No,
actually, all of that, Donna, what you just said in sarcasm,
That was
is
Lynn.
addressed
Sorry.
in.
That was Lynn. That wasn't me.
Oh, sorry, that was Lynn.
That was Lynn.
You guys are a tag team. Nicely done, Lynn. Sorry, Donna, Lynn. So what these issues are all addressed in I don't have my video up. I'm holding up the book. These issues are all addressed in the high cost of free parking, and what you
I
say.
read that
And
book.
so,
I
of
don't agree
course,
with
where
everything.
I'll hush so you can speak. Go ahead.
No, I read that book. I don't agree with everything in that book. And I think, like I said, let's talk about Fairfax County and not California or
Right. We're
various
talking
theories.
about a parking amendment here. That's all we're talking about. One parking amendment. And the issue, Carrie, too, is that besides reducing parking where appropriate, nobody has a problem. Reimagined parking is reducing parking everywhere. And there are places that need more parking in Fairfax County, regardless of your belief that they shouldn't have a car. We're telling the low income people in Fairfax County, by the way, we don't want you to have a car.
Wait, 1 second, please. This is more administrative trivia. Lynn, I think you're doing the right typing, right?
Yep.
And you create a table with 2 columns rather than columns.
Yes.
Okay, I think that would solve your problem. Okay. Sorry about that, but I think that's what
No
you want.
worries.
Okay. All right.
Let me do this one, not sharing, because it's severely inhibits.
Okay, go
So
do
I'm
what
going
you
to
need to
stop
do and then share
sharing
it
for a
again.
minute.
Okay. So what I'm looking at, so one of the benefits, one of the cons that I would put in here is there is no environmental benefit per se.
Correct.
Required. No
It's
environmental
not
benefit required.
specifically required. And in my mind, if you're going to reduce the parking, then you'd really want to include something environmentally, take advantage of that. Now, Carrie.
Wait. Stop. Don't. I mean, make sure that I'm able to capture this stuff, and I'm working on something else right now.
Okay, but I want to ask Carrie a question that he mentioned earlier. He talked about pay for parking and understand. Is that paying for parking out in the suburban Clifton area where people have their own, 4-acre lots and they park on the street? Is that going to be paid for parking there as well? Are we talking about paying for parking in certain areas of the county or the whole county? In my mind, that makes a difference. And we've heard that people, advocating paid parking is a good thing to do. And my question is that countywide?
Well, it would depend too on commercial. You might not have to pay for parking in your driveway, for heaven's sake.
No,
Or
I'm not
even,
parking,
or
but like I live in a community
This
where
parking amendment, this parking amendment does not directly say we're gonna have paid park. We're getting into something that is not related to the amendment.
okay, so that's something that's moot.
I mean, it's gonna result maybe in that at the end, but specifically, Donna, correct me. There's nothing in this amendment talking about, we're gonna go to paid parking.
But
Especially-
does this imply paid
The-
parking?
It
Are we
implies
afraid
at
that
the end, that's an assumption we're jumping to. Donna, you wanna correct me if I'm wrong?
There's nothing specific in the amendment that says we are definitely going to paid parking, but in the work group, they always bring it up as an option.
Yeah, as an
really the
option.
con is we're
But why are we getting into, we're dealing with the amendment itself.
okay?
And I think we need to stick to the amendment. That's what we're writing about. Because we're asking the supervisors to do something with this amendment.
Okay, so somebody give me another pro?
The lack of required parking in multifamily dwellings raises the cost of parking and transportation for lower income people.
That's a con. So put
That's a
that as
con.
I'm sorry.
Well, obviously, another pro is the revenue that could be derived from requiring paid parking.
Well,
Yeah,
we've
but
already
that is
agreed.
not in the amendment.
They're not talking
That's
about paid
not-
parking, and we're not going to discuss paid parking because it's not in the amendment. That's future. If in fact they were to come up with paid parking as a requirement, that'd be something different. It's not mentioned, therefore we can't talk about a revenue for something.
Is
that doesn't
everyone
exist.
familiar with the amendment that we're talking about?
We've seen it. I've watched the presentation too many times to think about. But you're right.
Okay, just,
The amendment doesn't say paid parking, therefore we can't make a pro about something that isn't mentioned.
So in answer to your question, Lynn, I've attended several sessions and I've read the thing all the way through and I'm scanning it as we're talking about it. So
okay, just wanted
I
to
can
make sure
answer in the
everybody was familiar
affirmative for
with it.
myself.
Okay, so the con was somebody mentioned this might people who or impinges on people who require vehicles to accomplish their work.
Yes, and that's very often the lower income people.
Yeah, I have discriminates against workforce employees, minorities, the young, families, individuals with disabilities, and the family and friends of all of the above.
Well, wait.
Is there any proof of that, Gary?
That was Dennis.
Any proof of that, or
Dennis.
is this just a personal bias?
No, well, you tell
That's
me.
Dennis.
Tell me
That was
who is going to
Dennis.
be affected by this this proposal.
We're all looking at this and
Who live in garden apartments, the people who live in high rises, the people who live in dense areas where there already is insufficient parking. Where are they going to park? Look, as I told you, I had 3 daughters, who were in community, fairly nice townhouse and apartment communities, but they didn't have parking. And then on a January night, for them to walk 3 blocks in the dark is something I always worried about because there was not enough parking already.
And I
And
think
now we want to
Donna,
take away more. It's cruel.
Donna expressed it. Donna, if you go back to what you said about it, that it affects the people that have to, have a truck to go do their job. Maybe Donna, you want
Workforce vehicles. Yeah, the people who need the vehicles.
Well, we've already put that as a second con. Impinges on
Okay.
people who require autos for work, right? That's what we're saying.
And what was yours, Dennis? Discriminates?
Well, it was a long thing. I don't know if you want to get into it.
Okay.
But
Okay.
it just
It
affects more
most
than
often,
just people who require autos for work, is I guess would be my point.
more often discriminating against lower income
Yeah.
people.
Well, why do we say that? I mean, why do we say that?
Where are these people going to park?
They have to go, they have to work different hours.
There's no
They have
proof
to-
of that. There's
Okay,
no proof
so
of that
instead,
statement.
Go to,
so when you don't want to
Carrie,
say
go to
lower
any
income,
house
you want to
in
say
your
discriminate
community.
against people who mass transit doesn't provide an adequate solution.
Yes.
I don't know. Oh, mass transit. Yeah. I mean, look, how do you get to Bethesda if you need an appointment? How do you get
Well, that's what
to
I'm saying.
Great
My
Falls?
point being is we need to make it not class oriented, but action oriented. So discriminate against people who are underserved by public transportation, not mass, let's say public transportation. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So we're not
That's an
talking
improvement.
about their class.
Even though it is, but okay.
But that's, you
I think it is, I think it's pretty clear. I've heard it so many times from the people here in the Hunter Mill area. And Donna just expressed it rather dramatically in her description of Annandale. And Annandale is very similar to Springfield. And essentially, there's a lot of people in your area, Carrie.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with Annandale, and every one of those doors on Americana Drive over there, coming off Little River Turnpike. And it's absolutely congested and smothered, strangled with the automobiles.
But those people have to have those vehicles, as Donna pointed out, to do their jobs.
Okay,
And
so we've got those 2 points already made. Point 2 says impinges on people who require orders for work and discriminate against people who are underserved by public transportation. I think we've covered those 2 points. Okay.
Yep.
The other,
Can I add
Need
one
more
more?
pros.
One more, going back to my initial point, which is that the proposal does not provide adequate community input.
okay, that's good.
What would be adequate community input? They've been working on this for a couple of years.
Well, I had never heard about it until 6 months ago or so. And I'm fairly plugged in to these
Yeah.
things.
Well,
Me
I
too.
think-
How
I
much?
think
How much long? So a positive. My question would be, yeah. Um, uh, Let me first acknowledge that Dennis just made a valid point that he was plugged in and he hadn't heard about it, and I've heard that from other people. So I accept that as fact. How much longer should we ask him to prolong the public review process, Dennis?
yes,
Well, first thing they could do is provide the actual committee that was set up to look at this with the information they requested. And
right.
then those folks, I mean, Gary's on there for us. We have great confidence in Gary. If he gets this information, he could tell us, what he finds, and he may change a mind or two.
But as Donna says, we haven't got that information. And so we need that information. That's a very good
I
point.
accept that. I appreciate that. How much longer should we ask him to give?
That's a difficult question. It definitely needs much longer period of time. At least 6 months. Another point is.
I was going to say 7 months.
There
I
you
think
go.
that's reasonable.
Until we
then
get
the
the
other
information.
thing is,
it's 7 months to get the information that the committee requested that it doesn't have, right?
well,
Is that what you're saying? That you asked for information, but you don't have it?
we need to prolong this 7.
More public input. That's what I heard.
Yeah,
And more community engagement, right? Isn't that what you're saying, Dennis?
yeah. And then the other thing is all these meetings, to track back a little bit to ZMOD, if you would, we have had no meetings in person or any outreach meetings. All the outreach has been done, via Zoom or on the, commenting on the county website. Has been no in-person meeting.
Yeah. Well, let me say that my experience matches what Gary and Dennis are saying. I asked them to come and do a presentation for us at the North Springfield Civic Association, and it seemed like that there wasn't time. That was the answer I got. So if we could encourage them to give us more time so they could come to our civic association meetings, for example.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so
That's
rather
good.
than does
We're
not
all in
allow for
agreement.
adequate community input, we want to say needs to be briefed to the community, further briefed to community, and right? Is that what you're saying? Further briefed to community?
Yes. And I would say
Briefing,
that
look,
it definitely needs to be in person. I mean, where people can,
yeah, no. Let's stay away from the word briefing. Look, in Reston, we have a lot of experience from 10 years ago about the county briefing us, which means they'd already made up their mind. What you
Yeah.
need is
That's true.
That's a
yeah,
good point.
good point.
Okay, does not
I
allow
have
for
a
adequate
question.
community input. Well, no, all right, there's 2 points. There's one about the fact that the the parking czar will make those diminished reduction independently of community review. And that's different than this.
Well, you won't be able
Yeah.
to.
Okay? So I believe another bullet, which is the parking czar, whatever that person's acronym is, uh, the decisions of the parking czar needs to have, and public needs to have the ability to review the decisions of the parking czars when he or she reduces the allocated parking.
He is the Director of Land Development Services.
Okay.
Yeah, let's use the proper title.
Yeah, I know. All right, but put the word in there. You know what I was talking about, but that's good. I'm glad you got the right word in there.
Thank you. That was you, Lynn, right?
That was Donna.
Donna. Thanks, Donna.
Okay.
The tag team.
Decisions
Hulk
need reviewed by the
Hogan.
public. That's it.
It's Hulk
And-
Hogan and
Another bullet for Khan was parking reduction impact decisions need to consider the impact in the neighboring community.
Yes.
so I would like to add a pro over there.
Please, but
That,
let's just not say decisions, but parking reduction decisions.
Wait,
Parking-
wait.
Those
Okay.
are the
I can't type and listen at the same time.
sure.
Sorry.
Me
I
either.
understand.
I'm sorry,
parking
Jeff. What did you
adjustment.
say? Not decisions, but what?
In front of it, parking reduction decisions.
Ah,
That's good.
Impact on the community, on the consider the impact on neighborhoods.
The surrounding neighborhoods.
Yes, good. Okay.
okay.
Go ahead, Carrie.
Pros.
Tell me another plus.
Yeah.
A
Yeah,
plus.
parking reduction cost cuts building costs.
Okay, that's great. Okay, now go back to the bullet above it. Why is the reduction of parking good? Is that because it diminishes impervious surfaces? Why is the reduction of parking by in itself a good thing?
that's to you, Carrie.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was reading and not listening. I'm so sorry.
My question is, I can see where the reduction of parking cuts down impervious surfaces, and that's good. But I can't see where the reduction of parking by itself is good or bad. I added a statement that made it good, but by itself, it's not either positive or negative. Why do you think the reduction of parking is good, Carrie?
Well, what you said, reducing impervious surfaces, surfaces is good because it cuts water runoff pollution. For another meeting that I was in earlier today was Save Lake Acatink, and we warned them 30 years ago when they put
Right.
toll roads on the Beltway, that would smother Lake Acatink with runoff. And now we're at the point where Lake Acatink's going to cost $30 million a year to dredge. So, yeah. So
Well-
impervious surfaces.
So fill it in and develop it.
No, it's a park. They can't do that.
That
See,
was fair, not Donna.
Okay.
That was Lynn.
we-
You guys are funny.
I
Okay,
think we would
all right, so
all
we've
be
added
supportive of
reduction-
But
keeping
people
Lake
do
Acton.
think that, Lynn, and it's
I know. I know. I'm
but
waiting
it's not.
for them to want to
Just
fill
because
in
they
all
think
the
it doesn't
lakes in
make it
Reston.
true. It's
He
not
was
true though.
It's
Okay.
crazy.
So we
Let me
have
add
here,
one point here real fast in that we were talking that the way they're reducing parking right now is not reducing impervious surfaces because they're adding buildings and not green spaces.
And that
That's
was
right.
told to us directly,
Yeah.
Gary.
So it's not really
Direct
it's
by
not
the
reducing
Okay.
impervious.
Okay, I accept the friendly proposal. So the next pro would be increasing green spaces.
well, that's not a pro, it's it's, the con says any parking reduction needs to be counterbalanced with increased green pervious surfaces. That's not what we're getting
went
with the
down,
reduction of parking.
Jeff. Your volume went down. I'm having a hard time hearing you.
What I'm saying is, according to the current plan, reduction of parking does not involve an environmental benefit. It means that they can build more in less dense, and more density and less space. It doesn't give us the green space benefit that you and I think it should. You see what I'm saying, Carrie? I think you and I both agree that if we reduce parking, we should expect a better environmental impact. It is not in the system at this time.
I think we
Yes.
all agree on that.
Yes, we do agree.
Okay.
Yes, we do
So
agree.
going back to the reduction of parking,
I think if I could, what I think Carrie is trying to say, based on what I'm understanding his perspective, is that he's trying to say that a reduction of parking reduces the amount of cars. Right, Carrie?
Well, my point was less parking is less asphalt. Asphalt creates runoff. So that's
Well,
what
if
I'm
the
saying.
asphalt is being replaced by building, that's no net gain in terms of impervious surfaces.
You are absolutely correct, and that's why the point down here that you just wrote
In
in
fact,
cons.
it's probably a net loss because many of the parking lots have strips of green space with trees, so that will be gone and converted to building.
And,
Have you
and,
been?
and
I disagree with your last point. Have you been to all the years we worked on the Springfield, what they call the Springfield Town Center now, and all the promises was made there, and there's just nothing but blanket asphalt over there now. So I don't see any green
I'm looking at
space.
all the parking lots in Reston
Oh, okay.
have strips with trees on them. That will be
okay.
gone.
All right. So I believe,
Anyway.
Carrie, that your reduction of parking would drive more use of mass transit.
Well, all right.
Is that true? I mean, is that what you're thinking?
Well, it could increase the demand for mass transit or transit in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Reduction of parking would drive more use of public transit or the drive. You see what I'm saying? I
Well,
think that's
people-
it's a pro.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, the less space you have for automobile storage, the more space you have for people.
Yes. Beautifully put. That's exactly right.
We'll all have cars.
Well, many of them won't, or there's no. You're not going to get rid of your cars. People are going to have them. I mean, I've got
Yep.
3 of the wretched things, but I drive all 3 of them a total of about 9,000 miles a year. I don't drive very much, and it reduces the amount of driving. The damn things just sit out there and rust. And the newest one is 16 years old, and the oldest one is 32.
Yeah,
They're
but
still
you've got a
driving.
32-year-old plumber with 4 kids who needs to have his truck to get to work every day. And he probably puts on
Well, that's
100,000
fine.
miles a year.
That's fine. He needs his car. He should have it. But there's
Okay.
no point in frivolous people like me taking up space for nothing.
Yeah, but you're
Uh,
you're probably, are your cars parked in your driveway, or where do they park?
No, they're parked out here on the side in the ditch, you know. But I do have a driveway, and they do park in the
Oh,
driveway.
that's it. We're
Uh,
talking
Okay,
about people that
So
don't
what
have
are
a
you gonna
driveway.
do? Okay.
but
here's
it
Do
another
we
comes,
have any
con.
more pros?
I have a question on one of the pros, the parking reductions cut building costs. It cuts it for the developers, but are residents going to pay less for the buildings? Or, because
might,
that
'cause
kind of
remember
depends on the market prices.
the cost of your parking is baked into the cost of goods sold.
Well, I mean,
So
you slipped in that last part to developers. No, that, there are other people other than developers who build.
Who?
But one of the concerns is, Carrie, what developers do is they sell these buildings to somebody
And
else.
you just type that in.
What?
Come on.
What?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, and the result is that the people that want to be in that building won't be in it because they do want to own the car, so they can't have the benefit of that building. So I'm not sure. I think the developer makes out the final owner is a loser too.
Well, the final owner makes the choice of where he or she moves based on the
No,
amenities
no, I meant the
provided.
final owner of the apartment building, for example. And that owner will not have a fully, um, up to maximum.
They won't be at full occupancy.
It
Sorry,
may, depending on where
thank
it's
you.
located. Two more cons, if you would, please.
Yes.
First con is reduction of parking implies that the county is on the hook for providing better public transit.
Yeah, that's good.
Not hood, but hook. Hook. All right. But I'm sure
That's
technically
good. I
speaking,
meant
there's a
hook.
better word for that.
well, one of the things that makes public transit more economically feasible is density.
Mm-hmm.
If you have enough density, uh, the buses may support themselves or closer to it.
I
If you
agree.
don't, then you're not going to have buses without a huge subsidy.
So the
Meaning,
other point I was going to make here is that the county should look at this policy and apply it area by area or neighborhood by neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? Create this policy should be applied in specific areas or just categories of residential or develop. Or, you know what I'm saying? It shouldn't be countywide. It needs to be tailored for you. It needs to be tailored.
hovering around.
Let's say
No, you're
it should be tailored rather than applied countywide.
No.
It does need to be.
So a site-specific basis then?
Well, not site specific because that's too fine a detail. I'm saying is like along Metro, along Tyson's, that there are areas where we can categorize it, and rather than neighborhood by neighborhood.
There's specific areas in the Reston that are differently impacted.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Should be tailored on an area basis. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We should. It's not a one catch all. It needs to be thought about. All right. So that's what I was trying to get accomplished.
Okay, well, it sounds like we've got a lot more cons than we have pros. Are there any more pros?
Oh, yeah,
Did
okay.
we agree that it's parking
There's-
reductions cut building costs to builders and developers, or what is the?
I agree with that, but the third bullet would be, this provides an option for people who choose not to be, to have to worry about cars or private vehicles.
How does it do that?
Yep, no
If
one
they
needs,
can move into a community that has less parking and theoretically has different benefits based on the fact that it has less parking, and maybe the cost is less because there's less parking, and it's tailored for them.
Mm. Look, I've been in London, spent a lot of time in New York, been to Chicago. All of those are places where you could get by without a car, and I would if I lived again in any of those places. That's not Fairfax County, not yet.
There
Not
are
for another
areas in Fairfax
years.
County that do that. Right now, Tyson's is aiming to be just that type of neighborhood.
And never gonna make it.
Since has some stations that have problems. And
Hold on.
it's the adjoining areas that are impacted, because they don't have the same access.
To who said,
Okay.
is that you, Gary? You were cutting in and out. Can you repeat?
Yeah, I would say, even in Tyson's, it depends on where you are in Tyson's.
Well, we agree that. That's why we say that it's area by area rather than, and it might be distance to the mass transit.
True, or even access to the mass transit.
Okay, so make that is that a pro or a con? The con being that this should be applied only to areas that have access to mass transit, or pro, this is suitable for areas with mass transit.
It is.
Well,
Right.
doesn't it fit with the policy should be tailored on an area by area basis?
Right.
Mhm.
Even to a metro by metro station
Oh, yeah.
basis, because they're different with the access to parking and their access to the metro itself.
I mean, I consider a metro area to be an area,
Okay, all right.
but
Do we want to mention, this policy might be better utilized in areas that are within a certain distance of metro stations.
Or bus stations.
No,
no,
remember, buses can be eliminated a lot easier than rail. We've seen it in my community.
mine too.
Yeah, that'd be a pro.
Yeah, so move
so
that
this
to a
would be a
pro.
pro?
Yes. We're desperate. Anything.
Okay,
But
Okay.
I think we're trying to get them to do a better job on this. That's what we're really trying to do. We're not saying that you shouldn't have a parking reimagined if it was really parking reimagined in the right way. And in
Well,
some
I
cases,
think-
that would be more parking. And
I think we're
so,
doing the job here, Gary.
Yeah, I'm just pointing out that we should have more cons. Because we
What's
want
that?
them to do a better job.
Well, no. In essence, if you're going to criticize something, you can say, although we agree that this does A, B, C, D, and E, we feel that it doesn't do blah, 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 blah. So you give them some points and then you swipe them on the other side. But you can't just say it's evil. You got to say you did some things that are good, and here
No,
are some of the
no.
good things, and here are the bad things. They outweigh the good things, but we give you credit for the good.
No, I'm
That's a
not,
diplomatic approach.
Diplomacy.
not disagreeing.
Yeah. Dennis and I are on the same page. A diplomatic approach. Okay, do we have enough?
Is anybody? I mean, I think this is a good thing. Now we're going to sit down and take this and write something based on it, but this does not apply. It does not take either the Sully District Councils, the Reston CAs. This is what we came up to, and we have this, and we can
All right.
then turn this over to the committees and say, hey, let's write something up based on this.
Good.
Now, let me ask, we have a land use committee in the Federation. we have a transportation committee in the Federation. I'd be happy to have, I think, Roger, you're on the transportation committee, are you not?
He mentioned he was.
No, he's on the TAC. I'm wondering whether he's on the Federation Transportation mailing.
Oh.
You got to get off of mute. Got to get off of mute, Roger.
Yeah, I'm not on your mailing list, but I
Do
would
you-
be happy to be on your mailing list.
Excellent. I always like more names. Okay. Okay. And Gary, Dennis, Lynn, Donna, if you'd be happy, I could put you on that list as well. You know,
Thank you.
and Sully, do you remember Glenn Stroop from about 25 years ago?
Sure.
Glenn was our transportation guru. I was a land use guru, or vice versa. I forgot what it was in the last millennium. You know, it's thousands of years ago. But when Glenn moved, we just made it the Land Use and Transportation Committee because we felt that the two items were so close to each other that they fit. And the Federation still has a Land Use Committee and a Transportation Committee, and separate. But you know, I believe Parking Reimagined fits both categories.
Yeah.
I'd say so.
Terry, look over what we've done here. What do you think? As my
And I
co-chair,
apologize. I had to step away to help Ann Ida just a moment.
I understand.
Listen, I'm very grateful for everybody's time and attention. And I really respect all of you for allowing me to participate and share a different point of view. You know,
Thank you.
it's how our community and country does better. And we got to keep talking with each other in a civil way.
Democracy. Yep.
Yeah, we got to keep talking to each other. And, you know, it worked out pretty good for a couple 100 years. So hopefully we can pass it on. And
Okay,
I'm just grateful for the opportunity. Thank you.
Lynn. So if I would ask you to attach this, or attach it to the email that I sent out with the information about the meeting, and send it to all the people so that everybody can see the results of our effort.
Okay.
And I thank you, Lynn, for doing that. I really appreciate it. And it was probably better for us to start with a clean sheet. And I still have trouble with columns. I will say that when I used WordPerfect last millennium again, right?
You're dating
I
yourself.
could do things that Word does not allow me to do. I would reveal the codes and I could see where things go and I could make them work. And when I'm in Word and I hit a carriage return or a return, the whole paragraph changes font. And I go, what just happened? How did that happen? And I go, give me Word Perfect.
Yeah.
Did
Let's
anybody
go.
do?
Yeah. Let's go back to Lotus 1, 2, 3.
Well,
Here.
does anybody do HTML coding?
A little bit.
Okay, so if you do HTML coding, you know that HTML coding says paragraph start, paragraph end, so and so. If you ever did reveal codes on WordPerfect, you saw the same thing: start bold, end bold, start underline, end, and I'm going. Now that I thought about it, HTML and WordPerfect, same thing. Never mind. Okay, that just shows you my technical background. Okay,
I did
thank you so
Fortran
much,
and
everybody.
COBOL, so programming.
All right, we won't go into COBOL. All right then. But that's if you're
Thank you.
a COBOL programmer, you're in high demand now. You're old, but you're in high demand.
I'm retired.
Thanks everybody for joining us
Thank
today.
you.
And
Bye.
I'm recording this because other people might want to hear what we've been coming up with. Okay?
All right.
I hope you don't mind. I don't think anybody said anything now that they would be held accountable for and hold over the fire.
Nope.
Guilty as charged.
Okay? Thank you so
Well,
much for your
thank you.
participation, guys.
Where can we
gals.
find
Thank
the
you.
transcript?
Donna, Lynn,
Donna,
Roger, Gary, Dennis, Carrie, and myself. I think we've done a good job.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Night.
Good night.
Thank you again, Lynn.